The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. From improving emergency response times to protecting against cyber attacks, local, state, and federal governments are innovating with Google AI. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American Innovation.
Well, I was down on my last dollar, then I started saving because the bank said fiscal restraint is what you're craving. So I put my earnings in a high yield account, let the savings compound and the interest mount. I'm optimizing cash flow, putting debt in check now. Time is my friend and not a pain in the neck. And we've got a little cash to rebuild the old debt.
Boring money moves make kinda lame songs, but they sound pretty sweet to your wallet. PNC Bank. Brilliantly boring since 1865.
Politico's Ankush Kardori can't talk about the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey without laughing, just a bit, to himself.
This has got to be one of the worst indictments I've ever seen.
Ankush used to be a federal prosecutor. It's not long, it's 1.5 pages.
That took me about 30 seconds to read, yeah.
You've filed documents like this, right?
Yes. Written, filed, yes. This is not remotely the sort of charging document you see in a serious, high-profile criminal case. It's thin, it's shoddy, and it's not well-written.
By now, you've heard the story of this indictment. The way one U.S. attorney refused to bring the charges and found himself out of a job. How a second prosecutor, a Trump loyalist, was subbed in to get this indictment done. The New York Times editorial board summed it all up by saying, the Comey indictment plunges the country into a grave new period. But actually, I'd argue we're in the exact same period we were in before, maybe a couple inches deeper in the muck. This indictment, after all, is about whether James Comey behaved corruptly. And how America thinks about corruption, President Trump has been trying to change that, one investigation at a time. Since Donald Trump has returned to office, I'm wondering how you've watched the definition of the term corruption change.
Oh boy, that's a tricky question. I would say that I wouldn't say that the definition has changed so much, but I do find one area in which people sort of seem to struggle with the concept of like whether something is corrupt or not is when the events are like out in the open.
What Ankush means here is usually a politician worries that you're going to see them as corrupt. It's what keeps them from, say, soliciting a plane from Qatar. This administration is not quite so concerned. I mean, part of the problem with the definition of this word corruption to me is that while Trump is doing corruption openly, he's also accusing other people of corruption. So it just creates this confusing cloud where the same word is sort of tossed around in either direction and it becomes a little meaningless.
I don't think that's not an accident. That whole strategy, that rhetorical sort of flattening, the sort of, they say I'm engaged in corruption, well, you're engaged in corruption. They say we're fascist, well, really, you're the fascist. And that's not an accident. It's a rhetorical strategy that's designed to neutralize the attack. First one, the real one, the credible one. And just to say like, oh, well, everyone's saying it, so we all just sort of throw our hands up.
Yeah. I mean, the president literally, his nickname for James Comey is Corrupt James Comey on social media. It's like part of his branding.
Yeah. I mean, there you go.
This indictment, I feel like there are two things happening at once here. One is that the indictment itself is flimsy and how it came about seems strange. But then the world around me is telling me to take this very seriously because it is a president filing charges against his former head of the FBI. Which is it here?
It's both. Yes, the case is flimsy and I think probably will not result in a conviction of Comey. But also, it is a bad thing for the Justice Department to be run in a way where if the president just happens not to like you, he can actually engineer criminal charges against you that appear to be flimsy, possibly frivolous, because that sort of power can be deployed against anyone. I mean, these are buffoons.
But in Kush, they're in charge anyway.
No, I agree, which is why I say it's not really any solace, but it is it does help explain why you feel the way that you feel.
Today on the show, why prosecuting James Comey feels like just the beginning. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. With the weather getting cooler, if you're like me, you're looking around for a couple of new items for your wardrobe, like a new sweater, some cute new kicks. And Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I went over to Saks.com to check out what they've got on tap, and I gotta say, what I love about clicking around their website is that every piece looks special, one of a kind. As if you'd walk into the office or a party and instantly grab everyone's attention. All the big brands are there, stuff like Alice and Olivia, the young and trendy stuff. I love that I can see the care in every piece Saks has chosen for their fall collections. Each dress or pant or shoe feels a little bit elevated. So if you want shopping to be fun and easy, head over to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Maybe we should go way back and just look at, how long has Donald Trump been pissed off at James Comey? How long have we known that?
Oh, gosh. 2017 early, if not itself 2016. Right, because as soon as Trump came into office, after winning the 2016 election, he was at odds with Comey.
Comey had investigated over whether Russia interfered in the election and helped Donald Trump get elected eventually, right?
That is correct. Comey initiated this investigation, or at least it was initiated under his directorship, the Trump-Russia investigation, and Trump hated that and feels like it sort of derailed his first term because it resulted in the Mueller investigation and so on and so forth. Now, bear in mind, I feel compelled to mention that if anything, Comey was much more helpful to Trump during the 2016 election than he was to Trump's opponent, Hillary Clinton, given the way that Comey egregiously mishandled the email investigation concerning Clinton and the disclosures around it. But yes, ever since then, Trump has had it out for Comey. He eventually fired Comey early into his term. That firing spurred its own sort of big political firestorm, congressional hearings. Comey testified in front of Congress. I'm one of those people who is highly, highly critical of the way Comey conducted himself during the 2016 election. But that is all irrelevant to the question of whether he should be subjected to this process and how the process will be resolved.
Yeah. What happened when Trump returned to office? How did it become clear that the gears were moving legally against Comey? When did we know that?
I mean, there have been rumblings in the press, but I don't think it became sort of clear that they were really focused on Comey and this specific fact pattern, meaning this sort of alleged false testimony, really until 2 or 3 weeks ago, when it sort of started to spill into public view. And I would say really over the last week and a half, because when the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia was fired, the reporting around that.
Well, he resigned, right?
Well, he resigned, but he was going to be fired. Trump confirmed as much. But you're right to clarify that. He did resign before he was fired. And then over the last week and a half, there's reporting that made it clearer that they were focused in particular on this issue of the testimony at this congressional hearing, that they were therefore running up against a 5-year statute of limitations, which is going to be, I think, any day now, actually. So they had to charge the case before that deadline. And there's still actually going to be, I think, some arguments that the case is time barred. But they at least had to get it in before 5 years passed after Comey's most recent testimony.
So this guy, Eric Siebert, had been running the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia. And it seems like there had been an investigation into James Comey that was active. And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks ago, he's just suddenly gone. He resigns. He tells his colleagues it was the easiest thing he'd done in his career to resign.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, if they're telling you you got to charge these cases and you have evidence, you have access to the full file and you're getting recommendations from your line prosecutors who you know and presumably trust, who are telling you these cases are extremely flimsy. We're not even sure we could get them past a grand jury if we're presenting this in an honest and professionally appropriate way. I think any credible lawyer, in that position has to say, I cannot put my name on this. I can't do this. It's a corruption of the process that I've committed myself to professionally, and everyone in that office swore enough to uphold the Constitution.
But then immediately after this resignation, almost a firing, President Trump gets on social media and complains that nothing is being done about James Comey, among others, like Letitia James, Adam Schiff, says they're all guilty as hell. Justice must be served now. And I remember this bleat because it felt like it came out of nowhere for me. But then over the next week, it became clear what was going on. Is that how you processed it too? Like, was it sort of like, what is this? And then you sort of realize?
Kinda, but I mean, he's tweeted, not, I wouldn't say like that explicitly, and at that time, it was a very, very significant post, and it will be very significant as this case proceeds. He's not going to be able to run away from it. I think Comey's folks are going to make as much use of that post and all the commentary as they possibly can, as they should.
Yeah, as a prosecutor, what does a social media post like that tell you?
I mean, it tells you that the prosecution came about because the president wanted it to come about, and not because the facts and evidence actually supported it. So again, this is like, it feels like such a cliche, but it's a unique situation. I mean, there's no other time in my lifetime I've seen a sitting president say to their attorney general at all, much less in public, you have to prosecute this person.
But the way he got it to happen, he had to put in a new U.S. attorney, this woman, Lindsay Halligan, and she was a pretty unusual choice. Can you just explain why?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay Halligan is an insurance lawyer, which I don't mean to denigrate, by the way, because insurance law can be difficult in its own right. She got onto Trump's criminal defense team during the Biden years. She was involved in particular in the defense of the classified documents case. She never took a particularly active role, though. My understanding is that she has no experience as a prosecutor either at the state or federal level. She has some experience as a criminal defense lawyer, but only in the context, I think, of Trump's case. So she's coming into this with no real relevant prosecutorial experience, no understanding of how the grand jury process works, which is tricky. Again, there's a fumbling quality to the way that Trump brought this about that itself is not only self-defeating, but like, again, I'm a little surprised even that like some competent lawyers couldn't have executed this more effectively, because he didn't need to fire the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia or force him to resign. There are a variety of ways in which, if he insisted that a case be charged in that jurisdiction, he could have a lawyer appointed to do so. It wouldn't even need to be a special counsel or anything. So this is a situation like so many that Trump engages in, where he's sort of taken a hammer to a situation where he himself would have been better served with a scalpel.
It's interesting you mention how doing the kind of work that Lindsay Halligan is being asked to do, it's specific, and there are a lot of ways to go wrong. Like the New York Times had this long write-through of what it was like when she went to court to get these charges filed against James Comey. It talks about she went into the wrong courtroom. She stood on the wrong side of the judge. She seemed confused about the paperwork she'd just signed. It really, really seemed messy.
It did. It did seem very messy, embarrassing. If you were a line prosecutor and that happened to you, you would be extremely embarrassed. Extremely embarrassed. She had 2 copies of the indictment. She didn't know which was which. There was one copy with 3 counts. One of the counts had been no bill that she'd apparently signed, which confused the judge. And then she didn't know where that had come from. I mean, these seem like small things in the grand scheme of things, and they kind of are, but they are signifiers of professional ineptitude.
Yeah. Does it mean anything to you that a grand jury did okay these charges, 2 out of 3 of them at least? Like, is that meaningful?
I mean, look, of course, it's meaningful in the sense that the prosecution would not have begun if they couldn't cross that threshold. I will say I was surprised a little bit that they managed to get the case through the grand jury at all, simply because what I had read in the reporting suggests the case was pretty flimsy in its own right. But that happened. It was returned. Even in that process, there are real warning signs for the government. I mean, one of the 3 counts, the grand jurors balked at. They no-billed one of the 3 counts. As to the other 2, the 2 that were actually that actually went through, only 14 of the 23 grand jurors signed off. Now you need 12.
Is that rare?
I mean, in a close, complicated case, yeah, you might have a situation where grand jurors are a little equivocal. In a false statements case, where you have to prove that someone has said something to the government that is false, you need to be able to get more than a bare majority of the grand jurors on your side in order to have a compelling case. The reason why, there is no defense in a grand jury. It is only the government presenting one side of its case. At a trial, the government is going to have to get all 12 jurors unanimously to agree that Comey is guilty, and the government is going to have to prove each element of the charged offenses beyond a reasonable doubt, and there will be an actual defense at the trial. My guess is a highly competent defense, given the lawyers that Comey has assembled, which include former U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald. So you kind of put that all together, and you see how they fared in the grand jury, where it's just them presenting one side, and we don't even know how fulsomely. And you see the results there, and you wonder, like, oh, what's it going to look like when this goes to an actual trial? It doesn't look promising for the government.
When we come back, by prosecuting James Comey, has the Trump administration inadvertently set a trap for themselves in the not-so-distant future?
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices, and that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies, so you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Ford was built on the belief that the world doesn't get to decide what you're capable of. You do. So ask yourself, can you or can't you? Can you load up a Ford F-150 and build your dream with sweat and steel? Can you chase thrills and conquer curves in a Mustang? Can you take a Bronco to where the map ends and adventure begins? Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Ready, set, Ford.
Recently, we asked some people about sharing their New York Times accounts.
My name is Dana. I am a subscriber to the New York Times, but my husband isn't. And it would be really nice to be able to share a recipe or an article or compete with him in Wordle or Connections. Thank you.
Dana, we heard you. Introducing the New York Times Family Subscription. One subscription, up to 4 separate logins for anyone in your life. Find out more at nytimes.com/family.
Okay, I don't want to do hopium, but I do want to acknowledge that what's happening right now with this prosecution of James Comey, investigations into others, it sets a template that could be picked up by Democrats if and when they return to power. Do you think Democrats should be thinking along those lines right now?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I wouldn't say like thinking about, who we're going to prosecute, but they absolutely need to think about if they, and this is true of any opposition figure within the Republican Party too. We might see a interesting, 2028 primary. Any opposition figure, I think, should already be thinking about, well, what is your plan when you return to government to address the things that we've already seen? I say that as someone who's like It will never, ever cease to frustrate me how the Biden administration fumbled this so badly.
I mean, this relies on the Democrats learning their lesson from last time.
This is exactly what I was going to say. And this is the thing that troubles me. Or any, again, I'm not a partisan here. I mean, a Democrat, whoever, any opposition figure. They knew when Trump left his first term. Many people were writing these things, including me, saying there's going to need to be some effort to hold people accountable, if not hold people accountable, to excavate what really went on here, kind of fix things within the government. And yes, promptly investigate and, if necessary, prosecute Donald Trump over his efforts to return the 2020 election and perhaps his financial fraud. None of that happened in any sort of prompt or efficient manner. The Biden administration and Merrick Garland, I think, engaged in historic, possibly world historic malpractice at the Justice Department. And so the question in my mind is, if we're talking about the Democratic Party, who is going to be running that process, right? There is a whole universe of people in the Democratic Party right now who are hangovers from the Biden political team and from the Obama political team. If the party is still beholden to them, I'm not going to do them favors by not naming names, but if the party is still beholden to the same figures and operatives and lawyers who have been handling things for the party and running things for the party for the last decade or so, in particular during the Biden years, that is going to be a huge problem, because these people not only failed to conceive of the right way to go about addressing the post-Trump years, but the execution was an absolute disaster. I mean, I think, not to digress too much, but I think almost every day about like how the world would have been different. The world, and I mean the world, would have been different if Trump had been promptly investigated and prosecuted over the 2020 election by the Biden-Garland Justice Department. And I think every day about what Biden and Garland themselves think of this question and where we are and what the country is incurring, in part as a result of their egregious malpractice and ineptitude.
Yeah. I mean, I look around and I see plenty of people, like day after day. Every day there's a new one where I'm like, oh, legitimately, this could benefit from an investigative eye. Like last week, there was news about Tom Homan, the border czar, the fact that, you know, the FBI actually seems to have him on tape accepting $50,000 to help agents, you know, who are posing as business people get government contracts, theoretically. It's an investigation that's been shut down. But I'm like, could all these things just be popped back open if a Democrat took charge?
Well, here's the thing. Whoever is doing the thinking, or as I said, someone wants to emerge as opposition figure and actually start to rigorously think about this, they need to be prepared within their plan for a mass pardon. The easiest way to eliminate the legal exposure that Tom Homan might have is for Tom Homan to ask President Trump for a pardon. Now, that does not mean that these people will be exempt from criminal investigation or prosecution for the rest of their lives, but it is a scenario that people, if they want to be serious in this space, have to contemplate.
I guess you have to start thinking locally. You have to start thinking outside of the bounds of federal pardons.
I have a whole series of thoughts on the matter.
You have a plan.
I have many thoughts on the matter that maybe we'll take over another time, but I have many thoughts on the matter. That's why I say it doesn't foreclose the possibility of investigation and prosecutions forever, but it's a variable that absolutely is central to this question. If he does, what happens then is a question everybody serious in this space needs to be able to answer in a credible and authoritative way.
I swear I wrote this question like literally an hour ago before we got on the line, but my next question was like, if you have a list of potentially prosecutable offenses that you're keeping track of day by day. And I wrote that question because I just feel like when I start to tally up these moments, I get overwhelmed. And I think anyone would be. And so you almost have to keep a list to keep yourself accountable and keep track.
Yes, I keep a list.
You want to share anything?
The law firm deals with Trump. Brad Karp and Paul Weiss's deal with Trump. I mean, if that had happened in another country, we would all be reporting it as what it was: state-sanctioned bribery and extortion. And I don't know if it will happen, but I look at that fact pattern and I say, well, there's a 5-year statute of limitations. Someone could plausibly come into office and investigate Brad Karp and Paul Weiss for bribery, extortion, conspiracy to commit extortion. That's right. And then
they'd have to act fast. 5 years. That's like 1 year post-Trump, right? If he theoretically leaves office after 4 years.
Paul Weiss is currently doing free legal work for the administration.
I see. That extends the statute of limitations.
It would, depending on your prosecutorial theory. That's why I say this is a much longer and complicated subject that we're in the middle of, right? So that's one. The other, I mean, again, this was public, like the Signalgate, right?
The fact that a reporter was added to this chat with Pete Hegseth about... Yeah.
Under ordinary circumstances, there absolutely would have been a criminal investigation and perhaps even a prosecution. So that's another one where I say, okay, this is clearly something that would merit criminal attention, and it's on my list.
Is there any way for people to be investigated, potentially prosecuted here in future that doesn't come off as political retribution, tit for tat?
I do fear that we are in this moment, immersed in a moment that may never end, where everybody just views this all as tit for tat. I think that's really sad and unfortunate, because it is just simply not the case, as many Republicans and Trump supporters seem to believe, that the criminal cases against Trump were frivolous or unsupported. The 2020 election subversion case, to my mind, was the most important criminal prosecution in the history of this country, and it was egregiously mishandled. But it was not frivolous at all. It was a very real case that very much deserved to be brought, and that I think would have resulted in Trump's conviction had it actually gone to trial at the Supreme Court and hadn't effectively bailed Trump out last summer with their ridiculous immunity ruling. So I do fear that we're in this tit for tat rhetorical moment where everybody thinks that way. But the thing that I want to try to convey to people, I'm trying to convey to people, is that we can't just say, oh, Comey was charged, and this is just part of all this process, and they did it to Trump, so now Trump gets to do it to them. We have to try to grapple with the merits of each of these things on their own terms. To be able to say this James Comey case is flimsy, politically motivated, and it's inappropriate.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this gets into the trouble with the whole redefining corruption thing, which is with all the sort of corrupt back and forth. You're corrupt, I'm not corrupt, I'm corrupt, but I don't care. It creates this environment where, waves hands, not a lot matters. And then you can just say anything is anything. And I guess this is just you getting me back, et cetera, et cetera.
It's really bad. No, I agree. I know, I agree it's really bad. I'm furrowing my brows on the other, and I'm like grabbing the top of my head right now. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but the reason why it appears that all of this stuff has just been flying around for years, and it's just anyone can bring a case against any political figure, no matter where they are, is because the Justice Department under Biden just grossly fumbled the situation. It demanded serious prosecutorial attention immediately, particularly after January 6th. And the fact that that did not happen is a tragedy and gigantic mistake whose consequences we're living through.
Ankush, I hope you unfurrow your brow.
I'm doing my best.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Ankush Kurdori is a senior writer for Politico magazine. He's also a former federal prosecutor in the U.S. Department of Justice. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. Paige Osburn is the senior supervising producer of What Next and What Next TBD. Mia Lobel is the head of audio at Slate. Ben Richmond is our senior director of podcast operations, and I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky, say hey, I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.